So tonight we just wanted to provide an overview of the current landscape of what's happening in the County Boards of Elections monitoring. We want to give you a timeline of key events and share information about the upcoming events and trainings. So the County Board of Elections County Boards of Elections work year round to make North Carolina elections work. By monitoring county boards of elections throughout the year, you can help support fair, accessible elections, help us to increase voter turnout, and help ensure that all eligible voters get their ballots counted. So, what are the county boards of elections? And again, I'm going to apologize because Tyler does such a great job at this, but these slides will help, and you'll get a copy of this training. So, what are the county boards of elections? Boards of elections are in charge of administering elections in their county. Every county board is made up of 5 board members, which vote on decisions and supervise board staff. Each board has at least one elections director. Most county boards have additional staff. Typically, the larger the county, the larger the staff. But there are some counties in which the elections director is the only full-time staff person. The list of duties for county boards of elections is long. It includes determining where early voting and election sites are, where polling sites are located when they are open, and that can have a huge impact on voter accessibility. They also responsible for appointing election day precincts and early voting officials, judges, and chief judges. They're responsible for updating voter rolls, and they conduct list maintenance. They're responsible for approving absentee ballot requests, certifying election results, and reviewing provisional ballots. These are ballots for which there is a question regarding the person's eligibility to vote. It includes all ballots submitted with voter ID forms. County boards of elections are also responsible for equipping and staffing voting sites. So these county boards, they need to ensure that the sites have enough ballots, pens, booths, etc., to serve the community. They also are responsible for testing voting equipment. Before each election, our voting machines undergo logic and accuracy testing. This testing is open to the public and ensures that the machines are working properly. Boards of elections also publicize local elections, auditing elections. They conduct a series of post-election audits after each election, including sample hand count audit, in which a sample of ballots are reviewed by hand to ensure the accuracy of the voting machines. These boards of elections also decide candidate challenges. They decide voter challenges. So when deciding challenges, the county board acts as a quasi-judicial body. This means that they act like a court when deciding these challenges. They hear testimony, consider evidence, and must ensure due process. And as this didn't sound like a lot, there's even more things that the county boards of elections are responsible for. So when you think about your role monitoring these county boards of elections, you help us. Let me just make things right. You help us to advocate for better early voting plans. I believe that's probably the most important thing that people do in the state. I mean, as far as turnout is concerned, advocating for better early voting plans is an extremely important thing to do, and it helps ensure that we get the biggest turnout that we possibly can get. So you're monitoring also, you monitor the need for poll workers. When you're monitoring the board elections, you let us know about that. You also identify problems, challenges in your county. You advocate for better election laws. You advocate for better elections funding and more. Many of you are veterans to this work, and so you know the more that comes with your monitoring the boards of elections. You can learn more about the duties of your county board of elections by visiting the State Board of Elections / about elections / county board of elections. So now I'm going to pass it to Lucas to talk about the landscape that we find ourselves in.
Thank you, Marquez. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lucas Sajo. I'm the Eastern Regional Managing Organizer with Democracy North Carolina. And I just, want to again thank you all for being with us tonight. It's really reassuring to see that we have over 150 participants here to hear about the Board of Elections and get ready for what we have ahead of us because it's going to be very important that we're in these meetings throughout the year. And so before we get into any more stuff, we really want to go over the landscape that we find ourselves in right now this year for the County Board of Elections, especially if you're joining us after 2024, there's been some changes that are important to this work. So we got to talk first about Senate Bill 382, which was passed in late 2024. So this law actually gave the state auditor the appointment power for the state board of elections and county boards, to where the state auditor now appoints all five members of the state board of elections, and the state auditor also appoints the chairs of all 100 county board of elections. This means that North Carolina is now the only state where the state auditor has this type of power over elections. This change took place in 2025, and it shifted the state board of elections and all 100 county board of elections from a 3-2 Democratic majority to a 3-2 Republican majority. So when you're going into these meetings, this is what you'll be expected to see, which is different from what we've seen prior to last summer. And then we had from there in September of 2025, it was announced that former North Carolina Republican Party Executive Director Dallas Woodhouse would now serve in a new role for the state auditor as an elections liaison. Dave Bolick, the state auditor, said that the appointment was to assist in your efforts to ensure election integrity while encouraging maximum participation in our elections. I have appointed Dallas Woodhouse as my liaison to the local and state board of elections. Mr. Bullock further wrote that Mr. Woodhouse will serve as my eyes and ears on the ground in our elections process. So, in the past, Woodhouse has supported reductions to early voting, including removing Sunday voting and getting rid of college campus early voting sites. However, in 2024, he wrote an opinion piece pushing conservatives to vote early. So, take that as you will. Since taking on this new role, Woodhouse has held meetings with county board chairs across the state. And it's also important to acknowledge that county board of elections are required to follow guidance from the state board of elections. While the state auditor has appointment power, the state board of elections is supposed to act as an independent agency. So that's just kind of a setup as to some background as we see as we've seen these shifts happen over the past year, and just some sets up some idea of what we're expecting to see moving forward. But to talk more about this, and especially to talk more about early voting, I'm now going to pass it over to Dr. Jovita Lee.
Thank you so much, Lucas, and good evening to everybody. I'm Dr. Chiquita Lee. I am the Deputy Director of the North Carolina Black Alliance. And so we are going to talk about early voting changes. And so since the new county boards of elections and the new state board of elections have taken office, we've seen significant changes to early voting plans, particularly for Sunday voting and campus voting. While some counties, including many of the larger, faster growing counties like Wake County, Mecklenburg County, and Union County, added voting sites, over a dozen counties actually dropped a Sunday or one or more Saturdays compared to their 2022 primary early voting plans. Several counties could not agree on whether to include Sunday voting or sites on several college campuses. The state board did not approve Sunday voting in Brunswick County, in Columbus County, in Craven County, in Greene County, in Harnett County, in Pitt County, or Wayne County for this year's primary election. Several counties could not agree on campus primary voting voting sites. And sites were proposed at Elon, which is in Alamance County, UNC Greensboro, and North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University in Guilford County, and Western Carolina University, that's in Jackson County. None of these sites were approved by the North Carolina State Board of Elections. A site at the Mars Hill Library within walking distance of the Mars Hill University campus was also not approved. About 50 students from North Carolina A&T attended the state board meeting when non-unanimous early voting plans were discussed. Jeff Carmen, a member of the State Board of Elections, said, "These students are saying, we want our site. We want to engage with the process. I don't think we should do anything but support that." Unfortunately, most of the other board members did not agree with that. Now the focus moves to pushing for greater early voting access in the general election. And so I'm going to pass it to Caitlin to talk about some of the recent election law changes and how that's impacting how we can engage this year. Caitlin?
Thanks so much, Dr. Lee. Hello, everyone. I'm Caitlin Metzger. I'm the Deputy Director of You Can Vote. We are going to talk next about some of these changes that are in effect now. So there's been other changes in North Carolina in recent years due to these laws. These are all passed by the North Carolina legislature. First, the elimination of the 3-day grace period for absentee ballots. Previously, voters who had their mail-in ballot postmarked by Election Day, meaning they got it into the mail by Election Day, would have had their votes count as long as the ballot was received within 3 days after Election Day. Now, every single mail ballot must be received by the County Board of Elections by 7:30 on Election Day. Regardless whether it's postmarked or not, it has to get there on Election Day. There's also less time to request an absentee ballot. The deadline to request a mail-in ballot is now 2 weeks ahead of time before the election. So shortening that request timeline by 1 week and ultimately reducing the time to vote. I will note that that deadline is coming up next week. So if anyone's planning to vote by mail, you have until the 17th of February to request it. Next up, we have reduced time for county boards to review provisional ballots. In previous years, there were 9 days for counties to research and contact voters who need to provide a photo ID or cure for their ballot to count. Condensing the canvas will disenfranchise thousands of voters and fails to account for the operational realities many election officials face when processing ballots. 2024's Senate Bill 382 severely limits the time to research, contact voters, and fix any issues with provisional and mail-in ballots. Voters now just have 2.5 days to fix provisional ballot issues, and county boards have just 3 days to review those provisional ballots. This year is a midterm election. That means we've got some significantly highly contested races, statewide races, including a really high-profile U.S. Senate race, as well as a North Carolina Supreme Court race. County boards of elections are concerned about the strain this will put on their staff. The Cabarrus County Board of Elections recently sent a letter to Representative Jonathan Allman, a Republican on the House Elections Law Committee, who represents Cabarrus County. The letter urged Representative Allman to support increasing the amount of time that county boards have to review the provisional ballots. It emphasized that the State Board of Elections registration repair project has also led to an increase of provisional ballots. And next slide, we're going to talk about that registration repair program. Another thing that happened last year, started in 2025, the State Board of Elections began their registration repair project. That is still ongoing. The State Board of Elections describes this program as an effort to collect identification numbers from registered voters who do not have a North Carolina driver's license or a North Carolina DMV ID number or their Social Security number in the state's voter registration database. Voters whose records, according to the State Board of Elections, apparently lack that information, which is lack HAVA information, which stands for the Help America Vote Act information, and have not otherwise complied with HAVA. These voters will be required to provide a driver's license number or the last 4 digits of their Social Security number to their County Board of Elections. Voters on the registration repair list can update their registration by using the online portal, which is the North Carolina DMV online portal at payments.nc.gov, or they can visit their local County Board of Elections office. Voters on this registration repair list who don't provide this information will be required to vote a provisional ballot. And remember that grace period is shortened on provisional ballots, or the cure period, excuse me. For more information on the registration repair program and to see if you or someone you know is on the list, You can visit this link at nc.gov/registration repair. As of last week, just over 70,000 voters remained on that list. And then just this week, or last week, recently as last week, the North Carolina State Board of Elections sent letters to an additional 241,000 voters who provided those identification numbers when they registered, but that did not validate against other government databases. So the state board is encouraging those voters to update those registrations. However, unlike, and which is good news, however, unlike the registration repair voters, these voters who provided a driver's license number or a social security number and didn't have it validate, those voters will still be able to vote a regular ballot even if they don't update their information. Next up, I'm going to pass it back to Lucas to talk about some stories and examples of County Board of Election monitoring.
Yeah, thank you, Caitlin. And just from that, I learned a lot more about the registration repair process because it's always something new happening there. But I'm going to talk a little bit about civic engagement as resistance. And so I think I recognize a lot of names on this call, so I know a lot of you understand the importance of the County Board of Election and the importance of being in these meetings. But just to really double down on that and show the importance of being there this year, we want to talk about how monitoring County Board of Elections can really help us push back against these restrictions that Caitlin was just talking about. Being at these meetings and filling out the form afterwards, it helps us document the issues and advocate for better policies. And then further, through Canvas monitoring, we're actually able to document problems and protect voters in real time to ensure that all eligible votes end up getting counted. Through early voting advocacy and elections funding advocacy, we can help increase access to the polls and ensure county boards have adequate staff and resources to do their work. So, all in all, your reports on all of these meetings and being in these kind of board of elections really make a difference. And just to further show that, we want to give you a few examples. So back in the 2023 municipal elections, those were the first elections that we had under the current North Carolina voter ID law. During those municipal elections, one of our monitors alerted us to the fact that members of the Guilford board decided to hold voter ID hearings. The purpose of the hearings was to determine the validity of voter ID exception forms from voters who stated that they could not provide ID because their driver's license had been lost or stolen. This was actually improper because board members are required to accept voter ID exception forms unless they have reason to believe that the voter isn't telling the truth. This led to a letter from the Southern Coalition for Social Justice, alongside Common Cause North Carolina and Democracy North Carolina, sending letters to the State Board of Elections demanding improved, legally compliant voter ID rules. Ultimately, the State Board of Elections updated its guidance, and they clarified that 4 of the county's 5 election board members must agree that the voter ID exception form may be false before a hearing takes place or before voters are contacted. The State Board also updated its rules to explain that the notice and opportunity to address the county board must only be offered to those provisional voters for whom the county board has identified a reason to find that their form is false. If the county board lacks specific information regarding a voter's form, then that voter should not be sent a notice letter or otherwise be made to think that they must address the county board to have their ballot counted. This is a great example of how monitors' reports actually led to a change in election policy and a big win for voters. So that's just one huge one, especially as we keep moving forward with voter ID laws on the books, and has been something that's come up in every election since 2023 as well. To show more, during a pre-canvass meeting back in 2024, the Rockingham County Board of Elections initially moved to reject roughly 130 previously removed provisional ballots. Luckily, a legal monitor present at the meeting alerted the board to the requirement that these voters' ballots should be counted if there's no evidence that the voter had a permanent residence outside of the county. The monitor followed up with the county's elections director via email, reiterating that the ballot should be researched and potentially counted. At the board's next meeting, the director flagged 45 previously removed ballots that should in fact be counted, and the board voted to change those from rejected to approved. Again, it's an excellent example of the importance of Canvas monitoring and how monitors can help ensure eligible voters get their ballots counted. And so these are just a few examples. Thanks to your hundreds of reports, we were able to release a comprehensive 2024 CBOE monitoring report. The report draws from observations in 81 counties and includes key challenges and recommendations. And overall, it's just an incredible resource for sharing with state legislators and election officials. And most importantly, it could not have been done without your help. So, when if you're attending these meetings and you're hearing from whichever group you're working with asking you to fill out those forms afterwards, this is why it's so important, because us getting this information, getting this information as to what's going on and getting these testimonies just goes to show how important Canvas monitoring is, Board of Election monitoring is, and just how important having access to our elections is, and how we can have more access to our elections moving forward. But that's enough for me tonight, and I'm going to pass it over to Christian from SCSJ to speak some more.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Shenton. I'm a senior counsel for voting rights at the Southern Coalition for Social Justice. So I'm one of the lawyers on our team working on elections and voting. And I'm going to walk you through a couple of the things that are coming up this year that split down basically into 4 buckets, and then make a more general pitch about why the more you're involved, the more effective all of the work of the people on this call is. So I'll start by going through those buckets. The first timeline, the first kind of big opportunity to get involved with County Board of Elections monitoring this year is actually ongoing right now. As many of you know, most of you know, early voting for our primary election starts tomorrow. Absentee voting has been ongoing for a few weeks, and Election Day is just a couple of weeks away on March 3rd. One of the things that County Board of Elections monitoring entails is monitoring the canvass process during those elections to make sure that the county boards are appropriately applying the legal requirements and regulations that apply to various categories of ballots, and ensuring that any issues that do come up in that process are flagged, and appropriate action is taken in real time. So there's a few different ways you can get involved with primary election canvass monitoring. The first of those is reviewing absentee ballots. County boards of election have already started to do their review of absentee ballots. Those take place on Tuesdays. Oftentimes they're in the evening. What they are doing in those meetings is reviewing the absentee ballots that they've received to this point and making sure that they're compliant with the requirements that absentee ballots have for making sure they'll count. So they're making sure they've been signed by the right people, the voter, the voter's witnesses, or a notary. If they got assistance from a person who is legally allowed to provide them assistance, did that person sign? They're also checking to make sure that the absentee voter provided a copy of their ID or a voter ID exception form in order to comply with the voter ID rules. They're making sure that the ballot is actually inside the envelope and in the proper place. All of these things are things that take a lot of time. And the reason that North Carolina law allows the boards to do this ahead of time is so that we can actually get a much more accurate and quick count on election night and shortly thereafter of these ballots. So like I mentioned, those are probably happening now in your county. If they're not happening now, they're happening soon. They happen on Tuesdays, and you can find those dates and times on your County Board of Elections website. The next thing that's going to happen in that primary election canvass monitoring process is the actual final canvass for the primary election. There's 2 dates that are really important for the primary election. Like Caitlin mentioned a little bit earlier, the period that county boards of election have to review and adjudicate provisional ballots is dramatically reduced now as a result of some changes that were passed by the General Assembly. So right now, almost all provisional ballot review is shaping up to occur on March 6th. That's the Friday. That is the statutory deadline, Friday after the election day, for counties to kind of make those determinations. And most, if not all, county boards will be meeting on that day to go through that process. And then the second, also statutorily required day, is 1 week later, the second Friday after the election, when county boards of elections are required to canvass their results and send certified totals for each of the candidates in each of the elections in order to um, report that to the state board and kind of finalize the election results. These meetings are extremely important for us to have monitors in. Those examples that Lucas and Marquez were talking about, in Rockingham, in Guilford, those are stories that came out of these meetings and that only could be corrected and have action taken because we had people there. Um, I'm a lawyer. I work with about 6 or 7 lawyers on my team. We work with folks across other organizations all across the state. I promise you, we are simultaneously in as many places as we can be, and it is nowhere near everyone. All the folks on this call, if everyone on this call went to their county board of elections canvas, if half of the people on this call went to their county board of elections canvas, we would have so much more coverage. We would have so much more um, ability to understand what's going on across the state and what needs to be resolved, what issues need to be elevated to the state board, how we can make sure that no one is having their ballot improperly discounted. So those are the meetings in the canvas process for the primary election, and I cannot encourage you enough to get involved in those. There's 2 more opportunities that come up over throughout the spring and summer. One is your counties will be setting the budgets for their county boards of elections. That process takes place usually starting in April. They're required to have a budget by the end of June because the new fiscal year starts in July 1st. There's usually public hearings. We cannot encourage you enough to go to those public hearings and advocate for your county board of elections to have the resources necessary to run elections properly and in a way that makes sure that folks have access to the right to vote. Um, Finances is frequently a reason we hear for cutting early voting sites, not providing as many hours for those voting sites, and only opening up a site even at the county board of elections, as opposed to more satellite sites. These are things that we hear about all the time, and making sure that your county boards of elections have the necessary funds to open those sites, to hire poll workers, to do those trainings, to have access to the resources and software that they need to do their jobs most effectively. That is a thing that is deeply related to how much money they have. So we encourage you to go to your county commissioners' public hearings and to advocate for those folks to have the resources they need. The other thing that's going to be happening along this time is early voting advocacy. Some of you may have seen the news clippings from the State Board of Elections in the past few weeks deciding where primary sites were going to be or where early voting sites were going to be for the primary election. That process will start again almost immediately after the primary is over. So county boards can start as soon as March, making their plans for the general election in the fall. And they are required to submit a plan to the State Board of Elections by July 24th of this year. So that's a process that happens quickly. They need to make sure that they're confirming all the sites they want to use are available. They need to make sure they have contracts signed. All this stuff has to happen before July 24th. So um, all the talk that you saw about early voting sites being eliminated, that we heard from Dr. Lee about early voting sites being eliminated or not offered on UNC Greensboro's campus, on North Carolina A&T's campus, on Western Carolina University's campus, on Elon University's campus. All of those decisions are going to be taken for the general election in the coming months, in March, in April, in May. So we encourage you to get in touch with your county board of elections to ask when they're going to start that process and to show up to monitor what's going on and to speak up in favor of increased access and increased sites. That is a process that, again, we are, as a coalition, so much more empowered by when we have more people in more places. So cannot encourage you to do that enough. And the last opportunity to get involved with County Board of Elections monitoring this year is going to be doing that canvas monitoring process that I discussed with the absentee review meetings on Tuesdays, the pre-election day absentee review meeting that'll take place the Monday before the election, the provisional ballot review meetings on that first Friday, the actual county canvas on that second Friday, and all of those dates are too far from now to put in your calendars unless you're really on the spot about it, but they're on there on the screen for you. Um, all of those processes will be happening for the general election just as they did for the primary. And that is the place. If you can only volunteer one place, general election canvas monitoring is incredibly helpful because that is where we see the most issues and where it is the hardest to be everywhere we want to be. And the last thing I'll say is these are the kind of the four things that we have on the radar that we'd love to put on you to pay attention to and try and make an effort to get out to. But county boards of elections meet year round. They meet every few weeks. And I cannot encourage you enough to go to those whenever you have the opportunity and interest to do so. Your county boards of elections are making decisions that affect how people in your county are going to vote every time they meet. If we don't know what's happening in those meetings, we don't know where to advocate. We don't know what might be going on. We don't know when a historically used site might be going away. We don't know when they might be interpreting a piece of law incorrectly. We don't know when they might be being affected by some dynamic that we hadn't heard a report of. All of these things flow from our County Board of Elections monitors. The more folks we have out there at the meetings, asking questions, speaking in public comment when it's offered, and reporting back about what they heard and what folks talked about and what decisions were taken, the better we can protect North Carolina's voters. So if this is interesting to you, if you're fired up about this, there is a County Board of Elections meeting near you, I promise. And we'd be happy and welcome your efforts to get involved in that process. So that's it from me. I know I talked a little bit longer. I'll pass it now to Tyler, who's going to have some concluding thoughts for us before our Q&A.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I can't remember if I actually introduced myself. I'm Tyler Day. I work with Common Cause as the program manager. But I hope that this has been helpful tonight. I do want to point everyone to this reporting form. This is the form that we use for Common Cause and for Democracy North Carolina. And the link is there, ccnc.me/CBOE report. That is what you will use when you go to monitor a county board. You go to that website and fill out the report. And that is how we know about what's going on. And then we can act on it. And I do want to stress that we do read all of these reports that you send us. We don't know I always say we don't know what we don't know. And if we don't have people monitoring, then there's a lot that we would not know about. And it's so helpful, as we talked about with the report that we sent, or the report that we published from the 2024 Canvas, and we've been able to share that report with election directors, with government officials, and yeah, it's all thanks to the work that you all do. So just highlighting there the report form, again, ccnc.me/CBOE report. And then the next thing is the first thing on that timeline that Chris talked about is Canvas monitoring. Well, actually, it's the absentee meetings, which are happening right now already, but after that, at the end of the that period, after election day, we'll go into the Canvas period, and that is when we will need Canvas monitors to monitor those post-election meetings, when provisional ballots are being reviewed, and absentee ballots, and sometimes voter challenges come up. And so if you want to learn more about that process, we will have a training on February 26th at 6 o'clock. So that is 2 weeks and 2 days from today. And if you register for this, you will get a link to that to sign up for that training. So we hope to see you at that training. And then lastly, I did just want to highlight some resources that we have both at Democracy North Carolina and at Common Cause for you to be able to use. We have past trainings from um, election funding and early voting advocacy and Canvas monitoring and just many other resources. At both of these links, you can see there democracync.org/take-action/elections-advocacy. And that is Democracy NC site. And then for Common Cause, ccnc.me/election hub. Both of these, we're going to be posting all sorts of resources for you to help you with monitoring throughout the year. And we've got those in the chat as well, so you can check that out. But with all of that, we will now open it up for questions. And do we have any?
Let me answer a couple that have been put in the chat.
Okay, great.
So one person, and then please keep adding these to the chat or raise your hand. I'm not sure which functions are enabled right now. Zoom is a little bit of a moving target sometimes, but please keep bringing your questions. One person asked questions about the chair of the Board of Elections duties, challenges from various board members to the chair, and efforts by members of the board to obfuscate the proceedings. This all sounds very juicy. And as the lawyer, let me say a couple of things. First, it's always going to depend on the specifics of what's going on. If you have something like this, which it sure sounds like someone does, please get in touch with us. We want to hear more about it. And we can't give like super clear guidance until we know the specifics of what's going on. But let me say a few general things that definitely apply in this situation. So the county boards of elections are bound by the open meetings law of the state of North Carolina. That means a couple of things. That means they have to take minutes of their decisions and what's discussed at the board. That means they have to provide advance notice of the time and place of the meeting. And that means that everything they discuss, every decision they take, needs to be made public. You need to have access to that meeting. If they are taking decisions in private outside of the very narrow exceptions to the open meetings law that exist in statute, which is mostly to receive legal advice, they are breaking the law if they are not taking decisions in public. They need to make sure that those meetings are open and that anyone who wants to can attend them. And then they need to make sure they're publishing minutes about those. So if you hear about board members who are trying to do things outside of those meetings, we definitely want to hear about it. This works in large part because the boards are required by law to make all of their decisions and to take all of their discussions, with a handful of small, narrow exceptions, in public. And that's because they're ultimately the only authority they have to do anything flows from the people in the counties they live in and serve. And so you have a right to be there. You have a right to hear what they're talking about, and you have a right to hear what they decide. Sometimes you'll have a right to a public comment. They're not required to make public comment available all the time. They frequently do. We encourage you to use those opportunities where they're available, but what they cannot do is hide the meeting from you. So if you are hearing about those things, please let us know. We want to hear about it. They will be getting an angry letter, if not more. And then another question that was put in the chat, someone asked the particulars regarding a board member's right to challenge an exception form. This I understand to be referencing the voter ID exceptions form and kind of voting about whether to advance to a hearing about whether that exception form might be false. The current guidance on this issue requires that at least four of the members of the board vote to advance to a hearing as to whether or not that affidavit is false. So you need 4 out of the 5, which means you need at least one member of both parties to move forward with a falsity hearing on an ID exception form. If they do not have 4 out of 5 people who think, I don't believe this person, I don't think this is true, then there is no hearing. So 4 out of 5 is the number that's required. And with that, I'll pass back to whoever has been monitoring the chat.
All right. Keith, do we have any additional questions that we missed?
Let's see, I'm looking at them now. Before I get to this question that just popped up in the chat, I saw a couple of folks, I want to make sure everyone hears this, ask if they could monitor meetings in a neighboring county or a surrounding county. And I just want to make sure that everybody knows that that answer to that question is a resounding yes. All County Board of Elections meetings are open and public meetings, and you can attend whatever county's meetings that you want to go to. Some counties offer remote or virtual setups, so you can watch a meeting on Zoom, YouTube, and others use other conference apps. I do that myself, and I find it very interesting to see what's going on in neighboring counties, and highly encourage those of you who have the time to do so as well. Good way to see some local drama when it does get interesting. Let's see. Looking at these questions, does it matter what voting site you vote at? Or no, it doesn't matter. I will pass this off. I don't want to talk for too much, but I do want to make sure other folks have a chance to talk.
Okay, thank you, Keith. And I see a question in the chat. Are there different roles for County Board of Elections monitoring? Um, um, Leah, and if I'm pronouncing that right, would you mind coming off mute and explaining more of what you're asking?
Sure, Tyler, happy to. So when we show up to monitor a meeting, are we going to be trained specifically to look for certain things? You know, I don't know anything about provisional balloting. I wouldn't know if something was going right or something wrong.
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, you will. So that's why we're having a Canvas monitoring training on Thursday the 26th, where we will go over everything you need to know to monitor Canvas meetings, and we'll talk about provisional ballots, absentee ballots. We'll talk about voter ID exception forms and all that, so that you are prepared. And that goes back to what Chris was illustrating with the timeline. We have, I like to think of it as different seasons throughout the year, from the canvas to early voting and election funding. And so we will have trainings on each of these topics so that you're prepared to go advocate for early voting plans, which is going to be a big thing coming up in the general. Um, and then advocating for elections funding, because as we've talked about, with the reduced time that counties have to review provisional ballots, many counties are going to need more staff to be able to handle all of those ballots, to be able to conduct the provisional reviews, the way that they should. So yes, you will be trained, and the biggest thing that I would say when it comes to all of this is just when it comes to monitoring in general, we want you to take good notes. That's really the best thing. We want you to just to be there to take good notes, and then fill out the report form so that we know about the notes that you've taken. Um, and then also, I'll just mention just being there, having a presence there makes a difference too. It makes a difference to, I think, the board members when they know that there are people that care, that are watching. I have been at some meetings where I'm the only person in the room, and there's a difference, I think, when the board and there's nobody there, and when there are a lot of people there, it does send a message to the board that, oh, the public cares about this. So yes. Um, all right. I'm looking to see. I have a question about Mark says that he's been monitoring, he's with Democracy Out Loud and has been monitoring the State Board of Elections. Any advice? I'll, I don't want to hog this. And anyone, any of my other
I
colleagues
can
have.
take that one, Tyler.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hey Mark, good to see you. Yeah, keep doing it, right? We're in this season right now where they're gonna have lots of meetings. And sometimes those are marathon meetings, right? I think I saw you at the one that lasted like 4 or 5 hours last week, or 2 weeks ago. It's great if you could be there for that and also, use the buddy system if you can't stay the whole time. The report that we shared is specifically just for county board meetings, but I think you could respond to our email or share any insiders information that you pick up on at those meetings. It's always better to be there in person, right? I know Keith mentioned like the counties do offer sometimes Zoom or YouTube or other ways, as does the state board. You can watch with WebEx. But being there in person is always better. You can hear kind of stuff that happens. You can pick up the forms that they distribute or get copies of information that they share. It's not always available online. I think the advice is to keep showing up, and the same point that Tyler just made about counties matters at the state level too. It matters when we're there and we're paying attention. And, when those 50 or 60 college students showed up for a 9 a.m. meeting, it mattered, right? We didn't get the outcome that they wanted, but that made national news, and it shows that people are watching and that people are participating in this process. And I think that is a great signifier for us all being more involved. So, I think the advice would be keep doing it, take good notes, and share that intel if you get any intel. And then just, invite other people to join us, right? Because you might not be able to go to every single meeting they have. Sometimes they meet 2 or 3 times a week, right? And so it gets busier. So that would be my advice for that one.
Okay. So I see we have how well from David, how well is North Carolina covered / monitored? Any serious holes? And do you have coverage in Dare County where I live? So I would say, David, generally, we tend to do pretty well in the urban areas around the Triangle, around the Triad, and around the Charlotte area. But in more rural areas, I think it's been more difficult to have consistent monitors. And I don't know that we have. It certainly, as Marquez says, we could certainly use your help in Dare County. Yes, certainly in that part of the state. But I also just mentioned it does not hurt to have multiple monitors in the same county. Um, uh, different people may pick up on different things, and certainly, um, you know, uh, it helps with having multiple people to be able to tag team at meetings. If one person can't make it to one, another person can make it. So that certainly helps. Um, okay, we've got a question about, okay, are the county boards responsible for protecting voters from intimidation? For example, will ICE agents be allowed to come into the voting area? Uh, that's a really good question. Um, So, and I can start, but certainly will defer to my other colleagues. They have things to add. And I know, yeah, yes, the county boards and the state boards are responsible for protecting voters from intimidation. The chief judge at each polling site is responsible for that area. And, if there are issues at a polling site, um, then poll monitors there or anyone who is seeing that should notify the chief judge and let them know, and then they can escalate it to where it needs to go in terms of um, depending on what the situation is. That's the chief judge's job, is essentially to put out fires. Uh, so, um, but if there is needs to be a bigger response, then the county board of elections may need to be contacted. But that is a really important um, role that the counties do. Everyone should feel safe in going to the polls. Um, and um, I know that the state board has released guidance that officers are not supposed to be stationed at polling locations. Um, so my understanding would be that would mean that ICE agents shouldn't be at those locations, um, um, as well as police officers. Um, but but yeah, I will turn it to my other colleagues if anyone else has additional comments.
Yeah, I'll hop in just real briefly. Tyler said the first thing you should do, which is contact the chief judge, let them know what's going on. That is the judge's job. The chief judge actually has a legal duty to maintain order at the polling place, and ICE at a polling place is about as big of a threat to order and kind of peace at the polling place as you can imagine. So talk to the chief judge. That's the first thing you do. The second thing you do, Jace already put in the chat, which is contact the election protection hotline. For those of you who don't know what that is a hotline that is manned by many of the folks on this call and the folks that we work with, along with folks like yourselves who volunteer to help out. That is a nonpartisan hotline that is run through the state election protection folks, like those on this call. And the number is, as my good friend Sailor Jones just put in the chat, 888-R-VOTE. So that's 888-687-8683. Give that hotline a call if you see anything like that at the polling place, and our group of advocates and lawyers will spring into action. We want to hear about that as soon as it happens. Ideally, we don't want to hear about it at all because it's not happening. But if it does happen, let the chief judge know and give us a call.
Great. I think we've answered the questions here either in the chat or live. Are there any other questions? Yes, certainly. And yeah, I'm glad Mark is asking about the state board rules for a comment period for the challenge of non-citizens registrations. Believe that's regarding using the SAVE database for list maintenance. And yes, I see. Yeah, and Caitlin has put in the comments a letter that at Common Cause, SCSJ, and many other organizations have sent regarding that. So yeah, it would be great to have it present at that hearing because we are concerned about that process. Yeah. Anyone else have anything to say about that? Any other comments? Okay. All right. Any other questions? I know we're a minute over, but I hope this
You
has
guys
been.
are great.
Oh, thank you, Carol. I apologize for my technical problems. It's amazing that our computer just chose to froze right as we began. But I hope that this has been helpful for all of you all. And I'm so happy to see such a great turnout. I was stunned, honestly, at the amount of people that we had signed up for this. But really excited that you all are you all want to get involved because I always say that it's democracy does not work unless we make it work. And sometimes I'll be honest with you, these meetings are not the most exciting things, but um, even just reporting what you're getting, that is helpful for us because we hope that things are going smoothly. Um, so I cannot tell you how helpful and important it is, this work. So thank you all so much for joining, and we will follow up with you and sending you the links from sending you the resources that we shared, and then also sending you the link to the upcoming training next or on Thursday, February 26th.